Hello guys, welcome back to me reading a new book, sadly. Today we're going to be reading Rodrick Rules, but if you guys already watched the preview, you would know that. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. September, Monday. I guess Mom was pretty proud of herself for making me write in that journal last year, because now she went and bought me another one. But remember how I said if some jerk caught me carrying a book with diary on the cover, they were going to get the wrong idea? Well, that's exactly what happened today. Now that my brother Rodrick knows I have another journal, I better remember to keep this one locked up. Actually, Rodrick got a hold of my last journal a few weeks back, and that was a disaster. But don't even get me started on that story. Even without my Rodrick problems, my summer was pretty lousy. Our family didn't go anywhere or do anything fun, and that's Dad's fault. Dad made me join the swim team again, and he wanted to make sure I didn't miss any meets this year. Dad's got this idea that I'm destined to be a great swimmer or something, so that's why he makes me join the team every summer. At first, my first swim meet a couple of years ago, Dad told me that when the umpire shot off the starter pistol, I was supposed to dive in and start swimming. So I was a whole lot, but what he didn't tell me was that the starter gun only fired blanks. So I was a whole lot more worried about where the bullet was going to land than about getting myself to the other end of the pool. Even after Dad explained the whole starter pistol concept to me, I was still the worst swimmer on the team. But I did end up winning Most Improved at the awards banquet at the end of the summer. That's only because there was a 10-minute difference between my first race and my last one. So I guess Dad's still waiting for me to live up to my potential. In a lot of ways, being on the swim team was worse than being in middle school. First of all, we had to be at the pool by 7:30 every morning, and the water was always freezing cold. And second of all, we were all crammed into 2 lanes, so I always get somebody on my tail trying to go around me. The reason we had to use 2 lanes was because swim practice was at the same time as water jazz class. I actually tried to convince Dad to let me do water jazz instead of the swim team, but he wouldn't go for it. Okay, so Greg would rather do water jazz than to swim. Like what? Water jazz is for 70-year-old women, man. Bro, chill. You're just weird. You're just being weird. I need you to chill out, Greg. I need you to chill out. Okay, honestly, reading these books frustrates me. I just don't want to talk about it. This was my first summer the coach let us boys wear swim trunks instead of those skimpy racing trunks, but Mom said Rodrick's hand-me-down bathing suit was perfectly fine. Your friends will be jealous because you'll be so fast. Well, I don't think wearing Speedos is gonna make you faster. I don't think so, Susan. After swim practice, Rodrick would pick me up in his band's van. Mom had this crazy idea that if me and Rodrick spent quality time on the ride home every day, we wouldn't fight as much, but all it did was make things a lot worse. Rodrick was always a half-hour late picking me up. And he wouldn't let me sit up front. He said the chlorine would ruin his seat, even though that van is something like 15 years old. Rodrick's van doesn't actually have any seats in the back, so I had to squeeze in with all the band equipment. And every time the van came to a stop, I had to pray I didn't get my head taken off by one of Rodrick's drums. I ended up walking home every day instead of getting a ride from Rodrick. I figured it was better just to walk the 2 miles than to get brain damage riding in the back of that van. Halfway through the summer, I decided I was pretty much done with the swim team. So, I'd swim a few laps, then I'd ask the coach if I could use the bathroom, then I'd just hide out in the locker room until practice was over. The only problem with my plan that it was something like 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the boys' bathroom, so it was even colder in there than it was in the pool. And I had to wrap myself up in toilet paper so I didn't get hypothermia. And that's how I spent a pretty big chunk of my summer vacation, and that's why I'm actually looking forward to going back to school tomorrow. So I have 2 things to say about this. Remember, my dignity is more important than staying alive. Well, bro wrapped himself up in toilet paper and sat in a bathroom. Like what? And second, he's looking forward to going back to school. How? Bro, I'd rather be down in hell than be at school, bro. And that's just impossible to believe. Let's keep going. Tuesday. When I got to school today, everybody was acting all strange around me, and at first I didn't know what was up. Then I remembered I still had the cheese touch from last year. I got the cheese touch from the last week of school, and over the summer I completely forgot about it. The problem with the cheese touch is that you've got it until you can pass it on to someone else. But nobody would even get it within 30 feet of me, so I knew I was going to be stuck with the cheese touch for the whole school year. Luckily, there was a new kid called Jeremy Pindle in homeroom, so that took care of that problem. Luckily, there was a kid named Jeremy Pindle in homeroom, so that took care of that problem. My first class was pre-algebra, and the teacher put me right next to Alex Arruda, the smartest kid in the whole class. Alex is super easy to copy off of because he always finishes his test early and puts his paper down on the floor next to him. So if I ever get in a pinch, it's nice to know that I can count on Alex to bail me out. For your information, kids whose last names start with the first few letters of the alphabet get called up on the most by the teacher. That's why they end up being the smartest. Some people think that's not true, but if you want to come down to my school, I can prove it. I can only think of one kid who broke the last name rule, and that's Peter Oettinger. Peter Oettinger was the smartest kid in the whole class all the way up until 5th grade. Peter Oettinger. Peter Oettinger. No offense to any Peter Oettingers out there. Oettinger. That's when a bunch of us started giving him a hard time about how his initials sound like when you said them out loud. These days, Peter doesn't raise his hand at all, and he's pretty much a C student. I guess I feel a little bad about the whole PU thing, and that's what happened to Peter. But it's hard not to take credit whenever it comes up. Anyway, today, I got pretty decent seats in all my classes except 7th period history. My teacher's Mr. Huff, and something tells me he had Rodrick as a student a few years back. Wednesday. Mama's been making me and Rodrick help out more around the house, and now the two of us are responsible for doing the dishes every night. The rule is that we're not allowed to watch any TV or play any video games until all the dishes are done. But let me just say that Rodrick is the worst dish partner in the world. As soon as dinner is over, he goes upstairs to the bathroom and camps out there for an hour. And by the time he comes back downstairs, I'm already done. But if I ever complain to Mom and Dad, Rodrick always pulls out the same lame excuse, which is my body is on a schedule. Well, I guess Rodrick is half right, because yes, his body is on a schedule. Like for me, for example, I always drink a cup of water at 7:30. Like if I do not drink a cup of water in 7:30 in the morning, I just feel dehydrated for the whole day. So I guess it's not just an excuse. Maybe Rodrick really is telling the truth. I don't know. I think Mom and Dad are too worried about my little brother Manny to get involved in a fight between me and Rodrick now anyway. Yesterday, Manny drew a picture at daycare, and Mom and Dad got really upset when they found it in his backpack. Mom and Dad thought the picture was supposed to be of them, so now they're acting all lovely in front of Manny. I knew who was really supposed to be in the picture. Me and Rodrick. We got into a big blowout over the remote control the other night, and Manny was there to witness the whole thing, but Mom and Dad don't need to find out about that. Thursday. Another reason my summer was kind of lame was because my best friend Rowley was on vacation pretty much the whole time. I think he went to South America or something, but to be honest with you, I'm not really sure. I don't know if this makes me a bad person or whatever, but it's kind of hard for me to get interested in other people's vacations. Okay, I get that. I honestly get that, Greg. This isn't being a wimp, this is the truth. Like, why watch a complete doofus like Rowley brag about his vacation? Well, your parents have money. What is Greg supposed to do about that? Okay, good for you. Seriously. Besides, it seems like Rowley's family is always traveling to some crazy place in the world, and I can never keep their trips straight. The other reason I don't care about Rowley's trips is because whenever he comes back from one of his trips, his vacations, he always crams it down my throat. See? Last year, Rowley and his family went to Australia for 10 days, but from the way he acted when he got back, you'd think he lived there his whole life. Another thing that's really annoying is that whenever Rowley goes to some new country, he gets into whatever fad is going on over there. Like when Rowley got back from Europe 2 years ago, he got hooked onto this pop singer named Joshi, who I guess was some huge star over there or something. So Rowley came back with his bags full of Joshi CDs and posters and stuff. I took one look at the picture on the CD and told Rowley that Joshi was supposed to be for 6-year-old girls, but he didn't believe me. Rowley said that I was just jealous because he was the one who discovered Joshi. And what made it really irritating was that now this guy was Rowley's new hero. So if I ever tried saying something critical at all, Rowley didn't want to hear it. Joshi says you should respect your parents and follow your dreams. Well, it's kind of true, you should respect your parents. Listen, don't respect your parents, you'll have a belt on your backside so fast you won't even be able to scream. Speaking of foreign countries, today in French class, Madame Lefrère told us we're supposed to be choosing pen pals this year. When Rodrick was in middle school, he had a 17-year-old girl from Holland as his pen pal. I know because I've seen the letters in his junk drawer. When Madame Lefrère handed out the forms, I made sure I checked off the boxes that would give me a pen pal just like Rodrick's. But Madame Lefrère read over my form and made me start it over and pick again. She said I had to choose a boy my age and he was supposed to be French, so I don't exactly have high hopes for my pen pal experience. Friday. Mom decided to start making Rodrick pick me up after school just like he picked me up after swim practice. So I guess that means she didn't learn from that experience, but I did. So when Rodrick picked me up today, I asked him to please take it easy on the brakes. Rodrick said okay, but then he went out of his way to find every speed bump in town. When I got out of the van, I called Rodrick a big jerk, and then it got physical. Mom saw the whole thing unfold from the living room window. Mom made us come inside and she sat us down at the kitchen table. Then she said me and Rodrick were going to have to settle our differences in a civil manner. Mom told me and Rodrick we each had to write down what we did wrong and then we had to draw a picture to go along with it. I knew exactly where Mom was going with that idea. Mom used to be a preschool teacher, and whenever a kid would do something wrong, she'd make him draw a picture of it. I guess the idea was to make the kid feel ashamed of what he did, so he wouldn't do it again. Well, Mom's idea might have worked great on a bunch of 4-year-olds, but she's going to have to think of something better if she wants me and Rodrick to get along. The truth is, Rodrick can pretty much treat me any way he wants because he knows there's nothing I can do about it. See, Rodrick is the only one who knows about this really embarrassing thing that happened to me over the summer, and he's been holding it over my head ever since. So if I ever tell on him for anything, he'll spill my secret to the whole world. I just wish I had some dirt on him to even things out. I do know one embarrassing thing about Rodrick, but I don't know if it's going to do me any good. When Rodrick was a sophomore, he was sick the day they did the school photos. So Mom told Dad to mail in Rodrick's freshman pictures for the school to use in the yearbook. Don't ask me how Dad screwed this up, but he sent in Rodrick's second grade picture. Look at Rodrick. Look at Rodrick. Unfortunately, Rodrick was smart enough to rip that page out of his yearbook, so I'm never going to find something to use against him. I guess I just have to keep digging. Wednesday. Ever since Mom assigned the dishes to me and Rodrick, Dad's been going down to the furnace room after dinner to work on this miniature Civil War battlefield of his. Dad spends at least 3 hours a night working there, down there working on that thing. I think Dad would be happy to spend the whole weekend working on his battlefield, but Mom has other plans for him. Mom likes to rent these comedies, and she makes Dad watch them with her. But I know Dad's just waiting for the chance to break away and go down to the basement. Whenever Dad can't be down in the furnace room, he makes sure us kids keep away from it. Dad won't let me and Rodrick go near his battlefield because he thinks we're going to mess something up. And earlier today, I overheard Dad saying something to Manny to make sure he doesn't go poking around back there either. Saturday. Rowley came over to my house today. Dad doesn't like it when Rowley comes over because Dad always says Rowley is accident prone. I think it's because this one time Rowley was eating dinner here and he dropped a plate and broke it. So now Dad has this idea that Rowley is going to ruin his whole Civil War battlefield in one clumsy move. So whenever Rowley comes over at my house these days, he gets the same greeting, which is the basement is off limits. Rowley's dad doesn't like me either. That's why I don't go over to his house much anymore. Last time I spent the night at Rowley's house, we watched this movie where some kids taught themselves a secret language that no grown-ups could understand. Me and Rowley thought that was pretty cool, so we tried to figure out how we could talk in the same language that the kids were using in the movie. But we couldn't really get the hang of it, so we made up our own secret language. Then we tried it out at dinner, which is your paw, dad paw, smells paw, like paw, a woman paw. Your dad smells like a woman. That is hilarious, bro. But Rowley's dad must have cracked our code because I ended up getting sent home before dessert, and I haven't been invited to spend the night at Rowley's ever since. Once we were done coloring in our machine, we started cutting out the groove where the popsicle sticks were supposed to go. But I guess we weren't really thinking ahead, because as soon as we cut the outer border, the whole maze fell inside the machine. So I guess we're not going to make a lot of money on Pac-Man unless people are willing to pay 25 cents to see Rowley sitting in a box. Sunday. Me and Rowley still have a lot of work to do, set up our holiday bazaar. But I realized we'd better not wait until the last minute to let people know about it. So I went down to the town newspaper's office and told them we want to order a full-page color ad in tomorrow's edition. They said an ad like that would cost $1,000, and I told them we could pay for it in the day after our event, but they wouldn't take an IOU, even when I told them how many drummies we were planning on selling. I suggested maybe they could just write an article about how regular kids were putting together their own holiday bazaar, and not charge us anything. But they told us they didn't consider our holiday bazaar newsworthy. I think it stinks that the newspaper basically gets to control the information people are getting at home. I complained to Mom, and she suggested that me and Rowley start our own newspaper and write about our bazaar. I thought it would be a great idea, and we got right to work. We came up with a name for our paper and put together the front page. The Neighborhood Tattler. Tattler reporters have uncovered a price gouging scheme at the school holiday bazaar that has been running unchecked for years. The popular chicken drumsticks, named drummies, have been sold at the bazaar for more than twice their original price. I'm outraged, said a loyal customer who did not want to be named. See drummies, A2. We realized we were going to have to come up with some more pages for people to take our newspaper seriously, so we started brainstorming ideas for other sections we could add. I figured we needed a comics section, so we started there. TGIF. Hey you, why are you running around in your underwear? It's Friday! Okay, I'm gonna run out in my underwear too. Okay, who forgot to wear deodorant? Can you clean up my spilled soda, Ned? How come you always ask me? We added an advice column where people write in questions about problems they're having. But we didn't have time to wait for people to send in real questions, so we just made a few up. Like, Dear Greg, my wife is always criticizing everything I do. The other day, it was just a little chilly outside, so I wore socks with my sandals. My wife actually made me go back inside and put on shoes. I feel like she treats me like a child, but she has a very strong personality, and I'm afraid to stand up to her. What can I do? Sincerely, Frustrated. Dear Frustrated, it's never okay to wear socks with sandals. You should apologize to your wife immediately. Greg. Dear Greg, are you single? Sincerely, the ladies. Dear the ladies, why yes, I am. Greg. Raleigh was all excited about the newspaper, and he said he wanted to be like a real reporter and go out looking for stories. So I told him he should go around the neighborhood to see if he could dig up any dirt. But what Raleigh came back with wasn't exactly hard-hitting news. Kitten has a fun day. By Raleigh Jefferson. Yesterday, Mrs. Sailor's kitten, Mittens, was seen frolicking in her front yard. Mittens spent an hour and a half chasing after a butterfly that was flying around Mrs. Salter's azaleas. But when the butterfly flew off, Mittens got very interested in something that was jumping near the front porch. But by the time I got close enough to see what it was, Mittens was chasing the thing that had hopped away. I decided to make myself editor-in-chief, so I could control the kinds of things we had in our newspaper, because if Rowley had his way, our paper would be like a little girl's coloring book. Mom told us we should go to some businesses downtown and see if anyone was willing to pay for ads to cover the cost of our first printing. The only person who was willing to buy an ad in our paper was Tony from Papa Tony's Pizza. And I'm pretty sure the only reason he agreed to help us is because we're in there at least twice a week, and he didn't want to lose our business. Tony gave us just enough money to buy some color ink cartridges, so we printed 100 copies. Monday. Yesterday we went around town trying to sell our papers, but nobody wanted to pay. So we had to start giving them out for free. When we handed a paper to Tony, he didn't seem too happy that his ad was running next to a negative review as his restaurant. Papa Tony's Pizza Stinks by food critic Greg Heffley. Have you noticed that Papa Tony's has started to really go down lately? It all started when they took the barbecue chicken pizza off the menu and replaced it with a spinach pizza. Then they stopped selling grape soda. Papa Tony's was the only place in town where you could go and get grape soda. So now I have to drink root beer, but it's really not the same. And half the time the soda water doesn't mix right with the syrup, so you either get corn syrup sludge or soda water. I think they're just trying to give you a bad fountain soda experience so you'll pay for the real canned soda, which costs twice as much. My last complaint is about the napkins. You used to be able to use as much napkins as you want, but now Tony only lets you have 2, and if you take more, he gives you a dirty look. I told him if he bought a bigger ad for the next edition paper, we could arrange for a more positive write-up. We still had a few dozen papers left, and since we were handing them out for free, I figured I could unload them at school. But when I started giving them out to kids, to kids as they walked in the door, Vice Principal Roy asked me what I was doing. He said I couldn't hand out an unauthorized publication on school grounds and that he was going to confiscate my papers, but I knew that this was really all about. Vice Principal Roy was just spooked that we were going to give the school a run for its money with our holiday bazaar. I was still pretty mad about the whole thing when I got home this afternoon, and I decided I wasn't just going to roll over and give Vice Principal Roy shut us down. Even though Vice Principal Roy took our papers, I figured I could make some signs and hang them up around town to advertise. I knew Mom kept poster board and markers in the laundry room for school projects, so I got to work. I used neon green poster board because I wanted to make sure you could see our signs from a mile away. I finished making the posters after dinner and called Riley to ask for help putting them up. We started with the school because I figured a lot of parents would see them when they dropped their kids off in the morning. But when we were done hanging them up, it started to rain, and the marker on our signs ran, and soon they were pretty much worthless. But when we pulled them down, we got a huge shock. The rain had made the green dye from the poster board bleed, too. So now there were huge green splotches all over the brick wall. We tried to get the green dye off the wall, but that stuff was like permanent ink. I knew we couldn't just leave green stains all over the school, so I tried to figure out what to do next. But right at that moment, someone yelled at us from the street. Me and Raleigh panicked and took off and ran. We ran across the parking lot and through the shortcut in the woods. Then we kept running until we were sure we'd lost whoever was back there. I wish we didn't run, because if we had just stayed and explained ourselves, it would have probably been fine. I don't know if the person who called out there was a parent or a police officer or what, but I just hope they didn't recognize us, because if they did, we could just be in some serious trouble. Tuesday. When I woke up this morning, I thought maybe everything that happened last night was a bad dream. But when I saw the newspaper on the kitchen table, so now I'm basically a criminal. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time I've been falsely accused of a crime. So when I was in the Boy Scouts, I was trying to earn my Service Project Merit badge, and I had to do some kind of good deed. Mom said I should go over to Leisure Towers and see if there was any elderly people who needed help carrying groceries or stuff like that. So she told Rodrick he had to give me a ride. When we got to the parking lot of Leisure Towers, there was a lady walking around who looked like she was lost. We asked the lady if she needed any help, and she said she was just walking to the supermarket on the other side of the apartment building. But I knew the nearest supermarket was almost 5 miles in the opposite direction, so we said we'd give her a ride. The only condition was that she had to ride in the back because I'd already called shotgun. We dropped the woman off at the supermarket, and when we went home, we walked in the door. I was pretty excited to tell Mom about my good deed. I told her about the lady and how we gave her a ride to the supermarket a few miles from Leisure Towers and saved her a lot of walking. But Mom said there was a brand new supermarket a block away from Leisure Towers and that the woman had probably been heading there. So that means we dropped her off 5 miles off from where she was trying to go. And now she didn't have a way to get home. Mom said we had to go get back in the van and see if we could find the lady. So we went to the supermarket where we dropped her off. But a cashier told us she'd already finished her shopping and left. We eventually found the lady walking along the highway with her groceries. We tried to offer her a ride back to Leisure Towers, but this time she wouldn't get in the van. I guess she must have called the local TV station to report us when she got home, because that night we were on the news. The school vandalism thing seems a lot more serious, though. Luckily, the eyewitness sketches in the paper didn't really look like me and Raleigh, so I thought maybe we'd be okay. But when we got to school, all anyone wanted to talk about was who was behind the green blobs. The school had a general assembly in third period. The topic was the so-called graffiti on the front of the school. Vice Principal Roy said someone had spray painted the front wall and he was sure the perpetrators were the students at our school. He said that someone in the auditorium knew who was responsible and it was terrible to live with a guilty conscience, and he said he was going to put a locked box in the cafeteria to make it easy for someone to leave an anonymous tip. At lunch, I could tell Rowley was freaking out, so I reminded him that this vandalism thing was a lot of baloney, and we didn't really do anything wrong. But Riley said if he got into a criminal record, he wouldn't be able to go and get into a college or get a job, and that his whole future would be ruined. It took a while, but eventually I convinced him to stay cool and wait for the whole thing to blow over. After lunch, the police came to the school, and Vice Principal Roy started calling kids down to the front office one by one. At first, I was worried someone had identified us, but then I realized Vice Principal Roy was only calling the names of the worst troublemakers. That's when I knew they didn't have any real evidence, and I started to relax. At recess, a kid named Mark Ryman told us what happened. When he went in for questioning, the police had a machine they said was a lie detector, and they claimed it was foolproof, so there was no point in fibbing. Mark said it was pretty obvious the lie detector was really a photocopier, but whenever Mark said something the police didn't like, Sergeant Peters hit the copy button, and out came a piece of paper. I guess the police eventually gave up because after lunch, Vice Principal Roy stopped calling kids down to the front office. So I finally feel like we're off the hook. Wednesday. When I got to school today, I thought the Greed Dio incident was totally behind me. So I was pretty surprised when I heard my name on the loudspeaker during morning announcements. I walked into Vice Principal Roy's office and he told me to take a seat. He said he knew I was one of the culprits responsible for the green blobs and asked me if I had anything to say for myself. I looked around the room for the lie detector machine, but I didn't see it. I decided my best move was just to keep quiet and ask for a lawyer. Then Vice Principal Roy pulled out a piece of paper out of the anonymous tip box and showed it to me. Me and Greg Heffley vandalized the school. All of a sudden, everything made sense. Rowley confessed, but he kept himself anonymous. I don't know if Rowley did it that way on purpose or if he's a total doofus. But I'm guessing it's door number 2. I didn't see any reason to play dumb at that point, so I told Vice Principal Roy the whole story. I told him about the signs and how the raid made the poster board bleed, and how we panicked and ran. Vice Principal Roy thought about it for a while, then told me I should have come clean earlier. He said he was going to have to give me a punishment to make sure to learn my lesson, and said that after school I had to scrub the green dye off the wall with bleach. Then he gave me a choice. He said I could name my co-conspirator, or I could just take the punishment myself. Let me tell you that was not an easy one. I really wanted to stick it to Rowley for writing my name on that piece of paper, but I also didn't see the point in both of us getting in trouble for something that I basically dragged him into. So I decided this time around, I'll just take one for the team. And if Rowley gets into a good college or gets some dream job later on, I hope he remembers to thank me. Thursday. It took me 2 hours to scrub the green dye off the wall yesterday, and it was hard work. I tried to get Vice Principal Roy to get me a few steel wool pads so I could speed things along, but he told me I needed to stick with the bleach. I finally got home at around 5 p.m. and there was a note on the front door. When I read it, I almost passed out. I couldn't believe Vice Principal Roy gave me up to the police. I thought he was going to keep this between us once I served my punishment, and it was over and done with. All I knew is that I can't go to jail. This year they took our class on a scared straight field trip to the local prison. They had these prisoners talk to us about what their lives in jail are like, and it really freaked everybody out. But it wasn't the idea of being locked up that scared me. It was the fact that the toilets and the cells are right out in the open. I have a huge issue when it comes to privacy. It's bad enough at school when you come back from the bathroom and everyone wants to know all the details. I've never actually broken the law before. When I was little, I thought I did. They used to have this thing at my supermarket called the Cupcake Club, where they gave a free cupcake to everyone under 8 years old. I had a membership card and everything. Well, I kept taking a cupcake after I turned 8, and every time I did, I thought I was going to get busted. But this one time, an alarm went off at the exact moment I bit into a strawberry frosted cupcake with sprinkles. Looking back, I'm pretty sure what happened was that someone accidentally tripped the fire alarm or something, but I was convinced it was for me, and the cops were going to swoop in and place me under arrest, so I made a run for it. Luckily, Mom found me a few streets away, because as far as I was concerned, I was a fugitive, and I had started my life of crime. But this vandalism thing was a whole lot more serious than the Cupcake Club episode, so when Mom got home with Manny, I didn't tell her about the note. The person I was really worried about was Dad. I haven't been on his good side lately. In fact, this morning, we had an incident I'm sure he's still sore over. I was asleep when I heard someone knocking on the front door, but I didn't want to get out of bed to answer it. I was hoping whoever was there would just go away and come back later. But the knocking got louder and louder, and the person out there was acting like a maniac. I buried myself in my covers, and I just prayed whoever it was wouldn't knock the door down. I thought about calling the police, but then I remembered I was a wanted man and that I'd have to deal with this problem on my own. Eventually, I got brave enough to go downstairs and grab a baseball bat out of the garage to protect myself. Then it got quiet. So I pulled the curtain back to see if the person was still out there, but I was surprised to see Dad standing on the front doorstep. He had gotten his tie stuck in the door and had left his keys inside, so he just needed me to open it to let him loose. So I'm sure Dad is ready to ship me off to juvenile detention the first chance he gets. In fact, if he's home when the police come, he'll probably hand me over into their custody without batting an eye. It turns out I don't have to worry about Dad, at least not for the next 24 hours. It started snowing pretty hard around dinner tonight, and Dad called Mom to say it was too dangerous for him to drive home, so he was going to stay overnight in a hotel near his office. That means I've got till tomorrow to figure out my next move. Friday. It looks like I'll have more times than I thought. It snowed all night, and by the time I woke up this morning, the snow was 3 feet high. They even canceled school. Apparently, we're in the middle of a blizzard. Rowley actually called last night to tell me we were supposed to get a ton of snow, but I didn't believe him. Every year this time around, Rowley calls to tell me there's a huge snowstorm coming, and he's always wrong. His family taped one of those holiday specials a few years ago, and the night they recorded it, a severe weather warning was at the bottom of the screen. So now the weather warning is a permanent part of the recording. Every time Rowley watches that holiday special, he calls me up and tells me a blizzard is coming. I used to fall for it, but I stopped believing him after he called me in a panic when he watched the special over summer vacation. So it looks like we're snowed in. Ordinarily, I would be really happy to be stuck in the house because it would give me a good excuse to play net critters all day long. But my account is locked thanks to Manny. A few days ago, Mom decided it would be a good idea to teach Manny how to use the computer, so she let him play on my net critters account while I was at school. By the time I got home, Manny traded in everything I earned in the game for tokens and then blew all of them in the Critters Casino. And the worst part is that Manny somehow figured out how to change my password, so now I can't even play the game and earn my stuff back. For the past few days, I've been getting emails from net critters telling me I need to get back on the site, and there's nothing I can really do about it. And if something doesn't change soon, I don't think my chihuahua is going to make it. This isn't the only password Manny has changed either. He figured out how to mess with the settings on our TV and change the parental lock feature. The parental lock thing is supposed to allow parents to control what their kids can watch. But Manny changed the setting and the only shows we can watch are his favorite. And he won't give up the password no matter how much we try to bribe him. Luckily, I can still play games on the TV. But Mom just got this exercise game and now she spends an hour a day using my system. When it got cold a few weeks ago, Mom said she wanted the whole family to use her exercise game so we'd stay active during the winter. I tried it out, but I don't really like to sweat while I'm playing video games. The problem is the game keeps track of how much you exercise every day, so Mom was on my case about not using it. But when I figured out how I could use my controller instead of my body, and within a few days, I had all the high scores on the game. When Mom saw my high scores, she took it as a personal challenge to beat them. I feel like I should probably come clean and tell her I cheated, but she's already lost 5 pounds trying to get on the leaderboard, so I think I'll do her a favor and keep my mouth shut. Mom always says I need to spend less time on the couch and more time being active, but the way I see it, I'm just conserving my energy for later on. When all my friends are in their 80s and their bodies are broken down, I'll just be getting started. This morning, Mom wanted to turn on the Weather Channel to see when the blizzard was going to end, but Manny wasn't budging on the parental lock, so she went into the kitchen and turned on the radio. The weather report said we could expect another 1.5 feet overnight, which means this storm is gonna break all the records for our area by the time it's finished. On the one hand, I was pretty happy because that meant I had more time to figure out what to do about the police situation, but I was a lot more worried too. The snow was already up to our mailbox and it wasn't showing any sign of stopping. Mom was stressed about the snow though. She said it was a good opportunity to slow down and relax, and told me I should go into the storage room and get a puzzle. But there's no way I was gonna get a puzzle from the storage room. I had a big problem about the puzzles, and that's because once I opened the box and it was full of crickets that had made a nest in there. After lunch, Mom said that even though we were gonna miss school, she said she was gonna make sure we didn't fall behind in our education. She said 200 years ago, all the kids went to school in one classroom, and that we could do the same sort of thing in our house. But if I was in the same classroom as a kid Manny's age back in the day, I would have gone bananas. Saturday. Last night, Mom brought up some stuff from the basement to keep us entertained. She found the magic set I got for my 6th birthday, and all the tricks were still in it. I never really played with the magic set because I couldn't read the directions in it when I got it. But today I could read through the instructions and tried a few tricks out. The first trick worked pretty well. I had Manny believing there was actually a magic hole in the table. I really wish I hadn't done that trick for Manny though. When Mom was in the bathroom, Manny got her glasses off the dresser and brought them into the kitchen to try the trick himself. When Mom got out of the bathroom and looked for her glasses, I told her what happened. Mom is practically blind without her glasses, so she said me and Rodrick were gonna have to help her out with Manny until Dad came home, and she could get a new pair. Rodrick said he had some urgent homework assignments to work on, took off for the basement, leaving me to deal with Manny. I had to brush Manny's teeth and tie his shoes, and I had to make him breakfast. I poured some milk in the bowl and then dumped Manny's favorite cereal on top. Well, Manny was upset that I poured in the milk first, and then he had a fit. He wanted a new bowl of cereal since he said I did it in the wrong order. But I didn't want to waste a perfectly good bowl of cereal, so I refused to do it. Mom asked what was going on, and I told her Manny was just being ridiculous. I expected her to back me up and tell Manny just to eat his cereal the way it was. My mom said she wouldn't eat it with the milk poured in first either. You know, back in the old days, adults were respected because of how wise they were, and people went to them to help settle their disputes. Nowadays, it's a whole different world, and half the time, I wonder if grown-ups should really be in charge. When Mom went upstairs to take a shower, and after she was finished, she yelled down there and said there were no towels in the bathroom, and if I got one from so I got one from the linen closet and tried to give it to her. But the handoff was tricky because I couldn't see, and I was shutting my eyes as tight as I could. Later that morning, Manny's had to use the bathroom, and Mom said she needed me to go into the bathroom and keep him entertained. But that's where I put my foot down because I knew what she had in mind. Manny used to make Mom read to him while he sat on the potty, but it just escalated from there. After Manny was finished in the bathroom, Mom said I needed to make him lunch. She said he likes hot dogs, so I got one out of the refrigerator and put it in the microwave. Mom told me Manny is really finicky about the way his mustard goes on the hot dog. He said he likes a straight line right down the middle, and I didn't want to repeat of Manny's breakfast meltdown, so I tried to make him a line of mustard as perfectly straight as possible. I was pretty sure I got it right. Manny had another temper tantrum, though I thought the line must not have been straight enough, so I got a napkin and wiped the mustard off to give it another try. But I guess Manny thought the hot dog was tainted, so I had to microwave another one. This time I tried to be extra careful of the mustard, but when I showed it to Manny, it was the same exact results as before. Mom asked me how to describe how he was doing it, and I told her I was making a straight line of mustard along the length of the hot dog. Sunday. This morning at 10, Mom told me to go downstairs and wake up Rodrick, but when I walked down the basement steps, I could tell something was seriously wrong. There was at least a foot of water covering the basement door. I guess all that snow was too much for the ground to hold, and it caused the basement to flood. I told Mom to come downstairs quick, and when she did, she was really upset that a bunch of our stuff was ruined. But to be honest with you, there were some things floating in the water that I didn't mind getting wrecked. Mom keeps a memory box for each of us kids, and mine was on the bottom shelf, so it was mostly underwater. One of the things that was in the box was my bedwetting calendar from when I was 8 years old. Let me say in my defense, there was a perfectly good reason why I was wetting the bed back then. In those days, I drank a lot of water before I went to sleep at night, and then I'd have these crazy dreams that make me need to go. I finally figured out what the issue was, but not before I got 5 frowny face stickers in a row. Some of the yearbooks from my elementary school days were soaked, but I didn't mind that either. My 5th grade yearbook was in the memory box, and that's the one when we were allowed to choose whatever kind of background we wanted for the school picture. I was the only kid in the whole school who chose the natural setting. I knew I should have just gone with a regular background, but Mom talked me into it when the forums came home from school. I don't really understand why Mom was so upset. Most of the stuff that got ruined in the basement for a reason. And that's because we never use it. One of the things Mom was really sad about was a spoon carousel Gammy gave us 5 or 6 years ago. I think we were supposed to collect a spoon from every country in the world, but we only got up to Canada. I did feel pretty bad for Mom when she found one of the family photo albums ruined. A few years ago, Mom got into scrapbooking, and she spent a lot of time cutting out pictures doing those really fancy photo pages. But there's one page in that album I didn't like because Rodrick always teases me about it. It's the one where I had a breakdown before a pony ride at the fair. Rodrick always says I was scared of the pony, but that wasn't true at all. I was scared of the guy handling the pony, but Mom cropped him out of the picture. Speaking of Rodrick, the flooding didn't seem to bother him at all. I'll bet if I hadn't woken him up, he would have kept sleeping even if his bed floated up the stairs and out of the house. The rest of the day was pretty awful. The water in the basement kept getting higher, so we had to make a bucket relay line with some of Manny's sand pails. Dad called from his hotel to check in on us, and when Mom told him what happened, Dad said he was really sorry. He wasn't home to help, but something tells me he's okay with the way things worked out for him. I would love to trade places with Dad right now, because he's got a clean room, a king-size bed all to himself. Mom told me and Rodrick that since the basement was flooded, we were going to have to share my room. She said it would be good for both of us to get used to having a roommate because it was practice for college. Me and Rodrick shared a room this summer for a weekend. We had to spend a few days at Grandma's while Mom and Dad took Manny to a kiddie amusement park. Grandma has a guest room, and I figured one of us would sleep on her couch and the other would get the guest bed. But Grandma said the guest room was occupied, so we couldn't sleep there. She'd given the whole room to Sweetie, the dog we gave her. But you'd hardly know he's the same dog because Grandma feeds him so much he looks like a tick that's about to pop. Grandma said me and Roger could sleep together on the pull-out couch she has in the living room. But that couch is covered in plastic because she doesn't trust us kids not to spill something on it. So me and Rodrick spent the whole weekend sleeping side by side on a queen-sized pull-out couch. I'd wake up every morning in a pool of sweat. I don't even know if it was Rodrick's or mine. I'm pretty sure that in a prison yard you sleep in bunk beds. So if they lock me out, at least I'll have a better sleeping arrangement than I did at Grandma's this summer. Thursday. Today was Thanksgiving, and it started off like it always does, with Aunt Loretta showing up 2 hours early. Mom always makes me and Rodrick entertain Aunt Loretta, and that means to talk to her until the rest of the family shows up. The biggest fights me and Rodrick have ever had were over who has to greet her first. The rest of the family started trickling in around 11. Dad's brother, Uncle Joe, and his kids were the last ones to show up at around 12:30. Uncle Joe's kids all call Dad the same thing, which is Aunt Frank. Aunt Frank. Mom thinks it's really cute, but Dad swears that Uncle Joe tells his kids to do it on purpose. Things are pretty tense between Dad and Uncle Joe, because Dad is still mad at him for something he did last Thanksgiving. But then Manny just started potty training and he was doing pretty good. In fact, he was about 2 weeks away from being out of diapers. But Uncle Joe said something to Manny that changed everything, which is better look out for the potty monster. What is the potty monster? In fact, it was 6 months before Manny would even set foot in the bathroom again. Every time Dad changed the dirty diaper after that, I heard him cursing Uncle Joe under his breath. We had dinner at about 2, and then people went into the living room to talk. I didn't feel like talking, so I went to the family room to play video games. Eventually, I guess Dad had enough of the family too, so he went downstairs to work on his Civil War battlefield. But he forgot to lock the door to the furnace room, and Uncle Joe walked in after him. Uncle Joe seemed pretty interested about what Dad was working on, so Dad told him all about it. Dad gave Uncle Joe this big speech about the 150th Regiment and the role it played at Gettysburg. What is Gettysburg? And spent a half hour describing the whole battle. It didn't look like Uncle Joe was really listening to Dad's speech, of course. It was only 6 months before Manny would even set foot in the bathroom again. Every time Dad changed the dirty diaper after that, I heard him cursing Uncle Joe under his breath. We had dinner at around 2, and then people went into the living room to talk. I didn't feel like talking, so I went into the family room to play video games. Thanksgiving didn't last too much longer after that. Dad went upstairs and turned up the thermostat until it got pretty stuffy. And everyone cleared out, and that's pretty much how Thanksgiving ends every year in our home. Saturday, December. You remember how I said Mom and Dad were eventually going to find out about Rodrick's party? Well, it finally happened today. Mom sent Dad out to pick up the pictures from Thanksgiving, and when Dad got back, you could tell he wasn't happy about something. The picture in Dad's hand was from Rodrick's party. Rodrick tried to deny that he had a party, but everything was right there in the picture, so there really wasn't any point. Mom and Dad took away Rodrick's car keys and told him his punishment is that he's not allowed to leave the house for a whole month. Okay, that's just savage punishment, my man. It's just a savage punishment. They were even mad at me because they said I was Rodrick's accomplice, so I got hit with a 2-week video game ban. Sunday. Mom and Dad have been all over Rodrick's case ever since they found out about his party. Rodrick usually sleeps until 2 in the afternoon, but on weekends. But today Dad made Rodrick get out of his bed by 8 a.m. Making Rodrick get out of bed early is a pretty big blow to him because Rodrick loves to sleep. One time last fall, Rodrick slept for 36 hours straight. How? How is that possible? 36 hours, a day and a half. He slept all the way from Sunday night until Tuesday morning, and he didn't even realize he missed a whole day of his life until Tuesday night. But it looks like Rodrick has found a way around the new 8 a.m. rule. Now, when Dad tells Rodrick to get out of bed, Rodrick just drags his stuff upstairs with him and sleeps on the couch until it's time for dinner. So I guess you gotta give this round to Rodrick. Tuesday. Mom and Dad are going away again this weekend, and they're dropping Rodrick and me off at Grandpa's. They said they were gonna let us stay home, but we proved that we can't be trusted on our own. Grandpa lives over in Leisure Towers, which is this old folks' home. I had to spend a week there with Rodrick a few months ago, and it was the low point of my whole summer. Manny is staying with Grandma this weekend, and I'd give anything to trade places with him. Grandma has her fridge stocked with soda and cake, and she has cable TV with all the movie channels. The reason Manny is going to Grandma's house is because Manny is Grandma's favorite. And all you need to do is take one look at her refrigerator for proof. But if anyone ever accuses Grandma of showing favorites, she gets all defensive. And it's not just the pictures on the fridge either. Grandma has Manny's drawings and stuff hanging up all over her house. The only thing Grandma has from me is this note I wrote down when I was 6. And I was mad at her because she wouldn't give me any ice cream before dinner. So here's what I wrote. I hate you, Grandma. Okay, nobody hates his grandma. Like, you could hate your parents, but you wouldn't hate your grandma. That's a fact. How would you hate your grandma? Like, of course you can't have ice cream before dinner. Greg should understand that. I don't know, or maybe literal 6-year-old Greg or something. Grandma has still kept that note all these years, and she's still holding it over my head. So every grandparent has their favorite, and I can understand that, but at least Grandpa's upfront about it. Saturday. Well, Mom and Dad dumped me and Rodrick off at Grandma's today, just like they said they were gonna do. I started looking for a way to entertain myself, but there's nothing to do in Grandpa's condo. And that's so I just sat down with him and watched TV. But Grandpa doesn't even watch the real shows. He just keeps his TV turned to security camera that's in the front lobby of his building. Okay, so Grandpa has security camera footage. Isn't this kind of ominous? Like, I have a feeling that this is kind of ominous. Maybe Grandpa's like a famous robber or something, or lawbreaker, or I don't know. Maybe. Saturday, yeah. And after a few hours of that, you start to go a little nuts. At about 5, Grandma made us dinner. Grandpa makes this awful thing called watercress salad, and it's the worst thing you ever tasted. Basically a bunch of cold green beans and cucumbers floating in a pool of vinegar. Rodrick knows I hate watercress salad more than anything, so the last time we stayed at Grandpa's, Rodrick made sure to pile it on my plate. I had to sit there and choke down every bite so Grandpa's feelings wouldn't be hurt. Okay, respecting your Grandpa's feelings. Okay, I respect that. And guess what I got as a reward for cleaning my plate? Okay, that was just going too far. Tonight, Grandpa gave us our salad, and I acted like I was just gonna eat it. But then I just stuffed it all in my pocket when no one was looking. It felt pretty disgusting when the cold vinegar started running down my leg, but believe me, it was about 1,000 times better than having to eat it. After dinner, the three of us went into the living room. Grandpa has all these really old board games, and he always makes me and Rodrick play them with him. He has this one game called Gut Busters, where one player reads a card and the other player tries not to laugh. I always beat Grandpa, mostly because the jokes don't make any sense to me. Putting economic responsibility before fiscal responsibility. I always beat Rodrick too, but that's because Rodrick loses on purpose. Whenever it's my turn to read a card, he makes sure he has a big mouthful of milk. At 10, I was ready for bed, but Rodrick called the couch. That means I have to sleep with Grandpa again. All I can say is if Mom and Dad were trying to teach me a lesson for covering for Rodrick, well, mission accomplished. Well, then I hope he never covers for Rodrick again. Sunday. Rodrick has a big science fair project due right before Christmas break, and it looks like Mom and Dad are making Rodrick do this one all by himself. Last year, Rodrick's science project was called Does Watching Violent Movies Make People Think Violent Thoughts? I guess the idea was to have people watch horror movies, then draw pictures afterwards, show how the movies affected them. But it was really just an excuse for Rodrick and his friends to watch a bunch of horror movies on school nights. Well, okay, maybe he really was doing research. Like, why doubt Rodrick? Rodrick is a pretty straight person. I don't think Rodrick's intention was research. So me and Dad, Rodrick's friends got the movie watching part done, but they didn't draw a single picture. And the night before the science fair, Rodrick didn't have anything to show for himself. So me, Mom, and Dad had to bail Rodrick out. Dad typed up the paper, Mom made the poster board stuff, and I had to draw a bunch of pictures. I did my best to imagine what teenagers would draw after watching violent movies. The thing that really stinks is that I caught heat from Mom when she said my drawings. I caught heat from Mom when she saw my drawings because she said they were disturbing. And that's why I was only allowed to watch G-rated movies for the rest of the year. Okay, like imagine watching movies like the SpongeBob movie. Imagine. Like that's G-rated, You're not even able to watch like Family Guy, like The Simpsons. Like that's stuff for like 2-year-olds. I think even Manny bypassed G-rated. Like that stuff like Don Quixote. That stuff like I don't know. Stuff like Cocomelon or something. One night, Rodrick accidentally left one of his horror movies in the DVD player, and Manny went to turn on the cartoons the next day. He got Rodrick's movie instead. See? I told you. I came across a couple of Manny's drawings after that, and some of them were enough to give me nightmares. Tuesday. Mom and Dad set up due dates for Rodrick on his science fair project, and by 6 tonight, he was supposed to tell them the theme of his experiment. Tuesday. Mom and Dad... were you ready to read this? Rodrick told Mom and Dad he was going to do his science experiment on the effect of zero gravity on the human spine. And from the way Rodrick was talking it up, you'd think the results of his experiment were going to benefit mankind. Dad seemed pretty impressed, or maybe he was just relieved that Rodrick actually came through on his first task. But I think Dad started to see things a little different later on when he told Rodrick to take the trash out of the curb. Wednesday. Yesterday at school they announced tryouts for the big winter talent show. As soon as I found out about it, I come up with this awesome idea for a comedy skit that me and Raleigh could do. But should I admit, But I admit that the real reason I wrote it was just to give myself an excuse to. I showed Rowley the script, but he wasn't too enthusiastic about the idea. You'd think Rowley would be grateful that I was going to make him a big star, but it was like Mom always says, there are some people you just can't please. Thursday. When went and found someone else to partner for the talent show, and he's going to do a magic act with this kid from karate named Scotty Douglas. And if you want to know why I'm jealous, let me put it to you this way. Scotty Douglas is in the first grade, so I would be lucky if he doesn't get beat up at school for this. They're having one big talent show for elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. So that means Rodrick and his band are going to be in the same competition as Riley and Scotty Douglas. Rodrick's all fired up about the talent show because his band has never played in front of a crowd, so they see this as their big chance to get noticed. Rodrick is still grounded, but the rule is that he's not allowed to leave the house, so that his band just comes over every day and practices down in the basement. But I think Dad's starting to wish he had worded Rodrick's punishment a little differently. But if Rodrick's band really thinks they can win this talent show, they better get serious and play some actual music, because they spent their last two practices fooling around with a new echo pedal they got over the weekend. Friday. Dad ended Rodrick's punishment 2 weeks early because he was going bonkers listening to Loaded Diaper practice every day. So Rodrick just went to his friend Ward's for this weekend. With Rodrick out of the house, that meant the basement was free, so I invited Rowley to spend the night. Me and Rowley bought a bunch of candy and soda, and Rowley brought over his portable TV set. We even managed to get our hands on a couple of Rodrick's horror movies, so we were all set. But then Mom came downstairs with Manny. Oh, of course, sending the littlest kid, which is the tattletale, down to spy on you. I have experience. The only reason Mom dumped Manny on us was that he could spy and tell her if we were doing anything wrong. Every single time I've had a sleepover, Manny has ruined it. The last time Rowley slept over, it was the worst. Manny must have gotten cold in the middle of the night, so he crawled into Rowley's sleeping bag to get warm. Oh my. That freaked Rowley out enough to make him go home early, and he hasn't been back to spend the night ever since. Looked like Manny was going to ruin another sleepover. Me and Rowley couldn't watch horror movies with Manny around, so we just decided to play board games instead. But I'm a little sick of board games, and besides, Rowley was kind of driving me crazy. He needed to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. Whenever he'd come downstairs, he'd kick a pillow across the room. It might have been funny the first couple of times, but then it really started getting on my nerves. So the next time Rowley went upstairs to use the bathroom, I played a prank on him. Please not. I put one of Dad's dumbbells underneath a pillow, and sure enough, next time Rowley came downstairs, he gave it a big kick. Well, that did it. Rowley started blubbering like a baby, and I couldn't quiet him down. And with all the racket Rowley was making, Mom came downstairs. Mom took a look at Rowley's big toe, and she seemed pretty concerned. I guess Mom's sensitive about Rowley getting injured in our house after the tinfoil ball incident, so she drove him home. The tinfoil ball incident. I was glad she just didn't ask how it happened. As soon as Mom and Riley walked out the door, I knew I'd better start working on Manny. Manny saw me put that dumbbell under the pillow, and I knew he would tell Mom about it. So I came up with an idea to stop him from snitching. I packed some bags and told Manny I was going to run away from home so I didn't have to face Mom for what I did. Then I walked out the door and acted like I was leaving for good. I got that idea from Rodrick. He used to pull the same thing on me when he did something bad, and he knew I was going to tell on him. He would act like he was running away, and then 5 minutes later he would just walk back inside. So after I told Manny I was leaving home, I shut the door and waited outside for a few minutes. And when I opened the door, I expected to find him crying in the foyer, but Manny wasn't there. where I left him. I started walking around the house looking for him, and guess where he was? Down in the basement eating my candy. This boy is a savage! What is wrong with this boy? Anyway, if letting Manny eat my candy is the price I have to pay to keep him quiet, I can live with it. Saturday. After I woke up this morning, I went down to the kitchen, but one look at Mom's face told me Manny had sold me out. Manny told Mom about everything. He even told her about our horror movies, and don't even ask me how he knew about that. Mom made me call Rowley to apologize, but then she made me talk to his parents and apologize to them too. So I don't think I'm going to get invited over to Rowley's house anytime soon. Then Mom got on the phone with Mrs. Jefferson, Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson. And Mrs. Jefferson said that Rowley's big toe was broken and he had to stay off it for a week. Then Mrs. Jefferson said Rowley is heartbroken because this means he'll have to miss the talent show tryout, and he's been practicing his magic act with the first grader all week. So Mom told Mrs. Jefferson that I would be happy to fill in for Rowley. Okay, reading this book just makes me frustrated as hell. I'm frustrated as hell at the tryouts and started tucking up Mom's sleeve to let her know this was a terrible idea, but of course she just ignored me. After Mom got off the phone, I told her the last thing I need to do at school is on stage is to do magic tricks with a kid who was in pull-ups a year ago. But Mom made me go through with it anyway. She took me down to Scotty's house and explained the situation to his mother, so now there was no getting out of it. Mrs. Douglas invited me inside. Mrs. Douglas. And Scotty went up to his room to start practicing. Well, the first thing I found out was that Rowley and Scotty were not equal partners in the act. Rowley was Scotty's assistant. What the frick? I told Scotty there was no way I was going to be a magician's assistant to a first grader, but Scotty said it was his magic stick and then started throwing a big tantrum. So I just went along with the idea to keep Scotty quiet because, believe me, I do not need any more trouble. Then Scotty handed me this shirt that was covered with all these sparkly sequins and told me that it was my costume. It looked like something Grandma would wear to a bingo. I told Scotty maybe I could wear something cooler like a leather jacket, but he said that wouldn't be magic enough. Anyway, it turns out all I have to do for the act is hand Scotty a prop every once in a while, so maybe it really isn't going to be all that bad. But ask me how I feel again if we get in and have to perform on stage in front of 500 people instead of Scotty's baby sister. Sunday. I'll tell you one good thing that's come out of practicing this magic act with Scotty Douglas. It's given me a bunch of good ideas for creating the Credit comics. Rowley's quit doing his comic strip Zooey Mama for the school paper a few months ago because he wanted to have more time to play with his Dino Blazer action figures. And maybe the cartoonist job is over. That means the cartoonist job is open again, and maybe I have a shot. Monday. Good news on the talent show. The tryouts were today and me and Scotty didn't make it in. Okay, so maybe I could have done a better job as Scotty's assistant, but I didn't blow it on purpose. I just forgot to hand him his props once or twice. We were the only ones who didn't make the cut, and that was actually kind of embarrassing. I know we weren't exactly the best act trying out either, but we weren't the worst one either. Some of the acts that got in were a lot lamer than our magic act. This kindergartner named Harry Gilbertson made the cut, and all he did was roller skate figure 8 times around a boom box that was playing Yankee Doodle Dandy. Rodrick made it in too, and he's acting like that's some huge accomplishment. Like I said before, Rodrick is really excited about the Winter Talent Show. In fact, he actually got his science fair project done a day early so he could squeeze in some extra band practices before the big night. But when Rodrick turned in his project, the science teacher told him he was going to have to start over and come up with a whole new idea. He said Rodrick didn't use the scientific method with a hypothesis and a conclusion and all that. Rodrick told the teacher he actually grew a 1/16 of an inch during his zero-gravity experiment, so that proved he was onto something. But the teacher said that's a normal amount for a boy Rodrick's age to grow in a month. Well, this really stings for me because I had decided to do my science fair project on zero gravity too. Now it looks like all the research I did was just a big waste of time. Dad told Rodrick he was just gonna have to skip the talent show so he was good to do a new experiment, but Rodrick says he's not going to do it. Rodrick told Dad he doesn't care about school anymore. He said his plan is to win the talent show and then use the tape of the performance to get signed into a record label. Then he'll quit school and just do the band full time. Sounds like a terrible plan to me, but I think Dad's pretty open to the idea. Wednesday. Tonight was the big winter talent show and I didn't want to go, and neither did Dad. But Mom made us both go to support Rodrick. Rodrick and Mom went to the school early to bring some stuff that Rodrick's band needed, so Dad had to ride in the band's van with Bill. And Dad wasn't too thrilled when he ran into his boss in the school parking lot. The show kicked off at 7, and let me just say, that was a really bad idea to combine 3 schools for this thing. They ended up having kindergartners singing to their teddy bears, followed by 18-year-olds doing speed metal guitar solos. I don't think Dad approved of Larry Larkin and all his piercings, because halfway through Larry's guitar solo, Dad leaned over and whispered something to the man sitting next to him. I wish I had time to warn Dad that the guy he was talking to was Larry's father. Another problem with combining the schools was that there were too many acts, and the show went on forever. At 9:30, they decided to start running 2 acts at a time, to keep the show moving along. Sometimes it worked out great, like when they had Patty Farrell tap dancing while Spencer Kit was juggling. But other times it didn't work out too good, like when Terrence James played a harmonica on a unicycle while Carice Klein read her poem about global warming. And Rodrick's band was the last to take the stage. Before the show, Rodrick asked me to videotape his band during their act, but I told him no way. He's been such a big jerk to me lately, and I can't believe he was trying to hit me up for a favor. So Mom volunteered for camera duty. Rodrick's band got paired with Harry Gilbert's and the roller skating kid, and I'm sure Rodrick wasn't too happy about that. I noticed Dad wasn't sitting next to me while Rodrick's band played, so I looked for him. Dad was standing in the back of the gym with cotton balls sticking out of his ears. He stayed there until the song was over. After Rodrick's band performed, they handed out the awards. The band didn't win anything, but Harry Gilbertson walked away with the prize for Best Musical Act. I mean, come on! How? A kindergartner roller skating around a boombox playing Yankee Doodle Dandy. Better than a rock and roll song. How? How is this possible? Like, this is just being in... I don't know how to say it. It's impossible to happen. I guess they did it for the littlies. I guess so. But you'll never guess who the grand prize winner was. Rowley's babysitter, Leland. He won his ventriloquist act because the judges said it was wholesome. I never thought I'd agree with Rodrick on anything, but I'm starting to wonder if he was right about Leland being a nerd after all. After the show, Rodrick's band came to our house with a videotape of their performance. They were all grumbling about how they got robbed and how the judges didn't know the first thing about rock and roll. Now that is the truth. So their plan was just to mail the videotape off to some record labels and let their performance speak for itself. They all sat down in front of the TV and Rodrick put the tape in the machine. But it took about 30 seconds for everyone to realize the tape was worthless. You know how Rodrick asked Mom to videotape the show? Well, she did a pretty good job of filming it, but she talked nonstop during the first 2 minutes, and the camera picked up every little comment she made. Every time Bill stuck out his tongue and flicked it up and down like a rock star, you could hear Mom ring in her with her opinion. In fact, the only time Mom stopped talking was when Rodrick did his drum solo. But during that part, the camera was shaking so much that you couldn't even see anything. At first, Rodrick and his bandmates were really mad because but then one of them remembered that the school taped the talent show and it's supposed to be on the local cable channel tomorrow night. I guess that means they'll be coming back over to watch that. Thursday. Now things have gotten really bad for me in the last few hours. Rodrick and his bandmates came over around 7 tonight to watch the talent show on TV. But they sat through the whole 3-hour show until their band came on. The school did a decent job of taping the performance and things were looking pretty good until Rodrick's drum solo. That's when Mom started dancing and whoever was doing the filming zoomed right in on Mom and kept the camera pointed at her for the rest of the song. That meant Rodrick didn't have anything he could send to the record companies, and he was really mad about it too. At first he was mad at Mom for messing things up, but Mom said if Rodrick didn't want people to dance, he shouldn't play music. Then Rodrick turned on me. He said this was all my fault because if I had just taped the show like he asked me to, none of this would have happened. I told him that maybe if he wasn't such a jerk, I would have done it for him. We started to yell at each other, but Mom and Dad broke us up. They sent Rodrick down to his room and me up to mine. But a couple of hours later, I went downstairs and ran into Rodrick in the kitchen. He was smiling, so I knew something was up. Rodrick told me my secret was out. At first, I didn't know what he was talking about, but then I got it. He was talking about the thing that happened to me this summer. I ran down to the basement and I picked up Rodrick's phone to see if he had made any calls. And sure enough, it looked like he had called every friend of his who had a brother or sister my age. By tomorrow morning, everyone at school will know the story, and I'm sure Rodrick exaggerated the facts to make the story sound even worse. Now that my secret's out there, I want to put on record what really happened, and not Rodrick's twisted version. Over the summer, me and Rodrick had to stay with Grandpa in his condo in Leisure Towers for a few days, but there was nothing to do, so I was just going bonkers. I was so bored I broke out my old journal and started to write in it. But taking out a book that said diary on the cover in front of Rodrick was a huge mistake. He stole my journal and made a run for it. He probably would have made it into the bathroom and locked the door if someone hadn't left Gutbusters sitting out. I scooped the book off the floor and ran out into the hallway and down to the stairwell. Then I ducked into the bathroom in the main lobby and locked myself in a stall. I kept my feet off the floor so if Rodrick ever came in, he wouldn't know I was in there. I knew that if Rodrick got a hold of my journal, it would be a nightmare, so I just decided to rip the thing into tiny little pieces and flush them down the toilet. It was better to destroy the thing than risk Rodrick getting his hands on it. True. But as soon as I started ripping pages out of the book, I heard the bathroom door open. I thought it was Rodrick, so I stayed completely still. I didn't hear anything, so I peeked over the top of the stall to see what was going on. Then I saw a woman standing in front of the mirror putting on makeup. I figured the lady accidentally wandered into men's room because people at Leisure Towers are always doing stuff like that. I was about to speak up and then tell this lady she was in the wrong bathroom, but right then, someone else walked in, and guess what? It was another woman. And when I realized I was the one that messed up, I was in the women's room. I prayed that those ladies would just wash their hands and leave so I could make a run for it. But they sat down in the stalls on either side of me, and every time someone left, and every time a woman would leave the bathroom, someone else would come in and take their place, so I couldn't leave. He probably thinks he had it bad when those kids made him eat the cheese, he should try being stuck in Leisure Towers ladies' room for an hour and a half. I guess someone eventually heard me in there, and they reported me to the front desk. Within a few minutes, word got around the building that there was a peeping Tom in the women's room. Now, I don't think that was Greg's intention. By the time security came in and got me out of there, everyone who lived in Leisure Towers was down in the lobby, and Rodrick saw the whole thing unfold upstairs on Grandpa's TV. Now that the story was out, I knew I couldn't show my face at school, so I told Mom she was gonna have to transfer me somewhere else, and I told her why. But Mom said I shouldn't worry about what other people think. She told me that my classmates would understand and that it was just an honest mistake. So that proves once and for all that Mom doesn't understand a thing about kids my age. Well, Greg speaks the truth. Like, honestly, kind of true. Now I'm kicking myself for not keeping up my pen pal relationship with Mamadou. Because if me and him had stayed in touch, maybe I could have gone to France as an exchange student and hid out there for a few years. Comment allez-vous? Yeah, whatever. All I know is that one place I don't want to go tomorrow is school, and it looks like that's exactly where I'm headed. Friday. The craziest thing happened today. When I walked in the door at school, a bunch of guys cornered me, and I braced myself for the teasing to start. But instead of harassing me, they started congratulating me. Everyone was shaking my hand and patting me on the back, and I didn't know what was going on. With all those guys talking to me at the same time, it took me a while to make some sense of anything. But here's what must have happened. The story Rodrick told his friends got passed on to their brothers and sisters, and they told their friends. But by the time word spread around, all the details got totally messed up. So the story went from me accidentally walking into the women's bathroom in Leisure Towers, it was to me infiltrating the girls' locker room at Crossland High School. I couldn't believe everything got twisted like that, but I wasn't about to set the record straight either. All of a sudden, I was the hero at school and even got a nickname. People were calling me the Stealthinator. Someone even made me a Stealthinator headband, and you better believe I wore it. Things like this never had to happen to me, and I wasn't going to pass up my moment of glory. Unfortunately, the girls weren't as impressed with me as the guys were. In fact, I might have a little trouble getting someone to go to the Valentine's Day dance with me. Monday. You know how Rodrick wanted his band to get noticed? Well, he kind of got his wish, because everybody knows who Loaded Diaper is now. I guess somebody must have thought that tape of Mom cutting loose at the talent show was pretty funny, because it's all over the internet. And for now, everyone knows Rodrick Heffley as the drummer from the Dancing Mom video. Ever since Rodrick's been hiding out in the basement waiting for the thing to blow over, I have to admit, I do feel kind of bad for him. I'm getting teased about the video at school, but at least I'm not in it. And even though Rodrick can be a huge jerk sometimes, he is my brother. True. It's very true. Tomorrow's the science fair, and Rodrick doesn't turn in a project, he's gonna flunk out of school. So that's why I offered to help him out with his project. But just this last time we worked together online. And I don't mean to brag or anything, but we did a really good job. Anyway, when Rodrick gets first prize tomorrow and passes science, I just hope he realizes how lucky he is to have a brother like me. Okay, guys, that's the end of the Rodrick Rules book. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. Remember to leave that in the comment section below which book you want me to read next. Have a good day. See you in the next one. Bye.